matters of importance to members of the press and by extension, members of the public. So let me just say that to start off with. Of course, yesterday, the government presented its budget communication led by the minister, the newly appointed, like healthcare, like improving the fiscal situation of the country, new schools, new homes were touched during the communication and will be fleshed out during the course of the budget debate, which will happen in the coming days. But this morning, we're very pleased to welcome the minister who has consented to have you probe him further on the tenets of the budget communication. So please welcome Minister of Finance, the Honorable Michael Halkitis.
Thank you very much. Good morning to all. Welcome back. As has been said, we had the budget communication read yesterday in the House, and just a brief word on what happens next is we return on the 8th of June to commence the actual budget debate, and we expect that debate to last about just about 2 weeks. So we expect to be finished by the 20th of June, and then send it to the Senate for the 22nd for their debate and passage, so that it comes into effect by July 1st. I spoke for two and a half hours yesterday, so I imagine you must be had enough of me, but I'll just give a few highlights once more of the budget, and then I'll open myself to any questions that you might have. One of the main highlights, I believe, is that we are on target for our projections for this year, in terms of the budget surplus, and as well we're projecting a surplus next year, albeit slightly lower than what we had put in the fiscal strategy report, and that is due, as was said in the communication, because of some events going on around the world that has the potential to impact the global economy. We do welcome the higher than expected growth rate that we saw in 2025, and we project continued growth next year and into the future. As we saw from the clip, the budget focused on investment in healthcare, education, security, easing the cost of living, in particular efforts aimed at reducing the cost of upfront home ownership, and as well we will see during the debate the unveiling of the amendments to the Real Property Tax Act to also exempt fourplexes down to up to fourplexes for the purpose of real property tax. Again, a saving that we believe will inure to that segment of the population that is beginning to invest and build wealth and build income through real estate. Another important part of the communication that we spend a lot of time on is improving government services and transparency and service delivery, which we are making significant investments in this budget, particularly through the new Ministry of Innovation and National Development. And all, as is the practice, all ministers will expand on their various allocations and their portfolios during the debate. And as well, we will have the opportunity to, during the wrap-up, answer any questions that arose during the course of the debate. But we are happy that we are on course, but of course we always remain cautiously, we're optimistic but cautiously optimistic because we know things can change so rapidly. So having said that, and having read a very long communication yesterday, I can move straight into questions, any topic that you want to talk about related to the budget.
I want to start with you mentioned that debt borrowing was moved into the National Investment Fund.
Yes.
There are questions flying out there. How is that possible for the government to be able to?
It's quite simple. What we did was we did an exercise. We did 2 exercises actually. We did a debt for nature swap back in 2024. Where we paid off about $220 odd million in a high interest loan, and as well, I think it was like $80 million in a bond. We did it in conjunction with the Nature Conservancy. If you recall that, it was the first Debt for Nature swap. What we did was and to make a long story short, we got better conditions, lower interest costs. We were able to spread out the payment, and we saved some money. We were able to save, I think it was $142 million, I think, over the course of 15 years for the improved management of our marine protected areas. That was a straight swap. We did another what we call liability exercise, which is, again, in common terms, households might look at it as a consolidation to make that comparison, where we went out and we paid off some of our bonds that were coming due, particularly around 2028, and some other bonds. And we raised a larger size, and we paid off I think it was about $700 million in outstanding bonds. And the additional money that was raised was not spent, was put in a national investment fund for future infrastructure development in particular. And so we didn't want to do just $700 million in the refinancing, because what we find is if you do larger size, up to $1 billion, there's more liquidity, more people buy it. It's more attractive for other investors to get involved because there's more liquidity, they can move it different. So that is why we did that. And we wanted to prove to the market as well that we could come to the market and raise that kind of money at good rates. And so we are satisfied when we do these things. We get the input from our lawyers, from the bank's lawyers, from the investment lawyers, so we're satisfied that everything was done in accordance with the law.
So just for clarification, there wasn't a resolution per se to move money from the consolidated fund to the National Investment Fund?
I don't know. Everything was done in accordance with what needed to be done. There was a resolution to do the borrowing. It was done. It was successful. The money is there. It wasn't used to finance spending. It's used for future investment. Let me just leave it like that. Let me just say, right, to be able to do that sort of transaction and get improved condition is a very positive thing for the country, extremely positive. And you see the results of it in 2 ratings upgrades in the past year. And a lot of that is because we are able to demonstrate to financial companies and rating agencies that we can go out to the market and do successful transactions. All right, and so I think there's something that all Bahamians should, no matter what your political stripe, should be able to look and say this is something positive for the country.
Well, I guess it wasn't a question of whether it was a positive
I don't mean you.
No, I'm just saying it wasn't a question of whether it was a positive transaction, but whether it was legal.
No, like I said, everything we do, we advise by our attorneys, the Attorney General, bank's attorneys, and we do it according to law.
How do you respond to the Free National Movement that has questioned whether you were previously president of Top Notch Builders?
Well, back in 2018, as a private citizen, I was involved in financial consulting and corporate services consulting. I was approached to provide consulting and directorship services to top-notch builders, in particular setting up proper corporate governance procedures and structures. That was the middle of 2019. By April 2020, the company suspended operations due to COVID-19 pandemic, and I resigned as director of that company and all of the other directorships I held in 2021.
What do you make of these documents that are now circulating on social media? Do you think it's mischief-making in light of Mr.
I invite
Garber's arrest?
all corporate documents, this is the last thing I'll say on it, available from the Registrar General's Department. And so anybody who is interested in the complete story can get the complete set of documents, which not only show who the directors are, but who the shareholders are, who the owners of the companies were at the time. And they would see that it's not who some people say it was, and I'll leave it like that. Look at the complete set.
Were any contracts involving top-notch builders, including the 8 Mile Rock administrative complex, awarded without like a competitive bidding process?
That 8 Mile Rock thing was back in pre-2017, so I was not involved with that.
Are you able to confirm if you were approached by Eric Gardner himself?
No, I am able to confirm that I was not. I was approached by the attorney. And I invite you to find the complete set of the documents and you'll see the whole picture.
And given, the allegations now surrounding Gardner and, these documents, will the government, I guess, introduce stricter vetting and oversight, for companies receiving public contracts and
Let me just say, and I won't address that because you're assuming certain things, okay? So you're assuming certain things in terms of ownership, et cetera, okay? And I won't speculate, so I won't get into that because, yeah.
Are there concerns, given everything that's going on surrounding court cases involving drugs and local involvement, all this politician number one stuff, that as the Financial Action Task Force comes in to do its work later on this year, that could have some kind of effect on what they're going to talk about or what they're going to ask, what they're going to see here in the country?
A very famous man once said, "I don't deal in hypotheticals. The world is vexing as it is." So I won't follow that up and hypothesize on that. I think they'll come and look at our financial system, and that is what they'll base their report on.
Now, the opposition has also asked the government to explain, I guess, the source of the funds and the process used for the distribution of $200,000 in vouchers prior to the election.
I see that, and as we move into the debate, we can address these issues. I understand that they asked us several questions, and so those will be addressed.
Can you respond to their claims of that the PPPs are off-the-book loans and not legitimate PPPs?
I addressed it in what is a legitimate PPP. Some people say, the IMF has seen our government to invest in infrastructure without paying all of the money, without having the money up front. There's nothing wrong with that. It's an established procedure that many countries use, and there's nothing at all wrong with it. Now, there is an opinion, I guess, out there to say that, maybe there is something, but there's nothing wrong with it. It's established. There is a framework. We have, large financial institutions that fund infrastructure projects based on a PPP basis. Some people think that unless money is being generated from the infrastructure project, like if it's a toll road or a toll bridge, then it's not a so-called true PPP because it does not generate income. But we don't take that view. The idea is we are a country that needs infrastructure. And once it's transparent and above board, properly structured, it enables us to do things like accelerate our airport infrastructure and improvement of infrastructure in the Family Islands.
Was that consultant hired to address the concerns of the IMF?
The IMF did not have concerns, so to speak. The IMF, and I said it in my communication, we hired the consultant to refine our process. The IMF's comment was that PPPs are a useful tool to accelerate investment because countries, tend not to have the money up front to be able to do it. And you have a lot of countries who are in that position, particularly coming out of COVID-19, where everybody's debt was sky high. The needs were still there, and so you needed to figure out ways on how to do this investment without the large cash outlay upfront.
How do the taxpayers find out then how much the country's in the hole for with certain types of PPPs? For instance, we don't know the interest rate on certain loans that were taken out by private businesses to do PPP work.
Well,
So
that's
we
their
don't know.
business.
That's the company's business?
If they take out loans to do PPP work, that's between them and their financial institution. What we are concerned about is the financial terms of the government of the Bahamas and the person who's executing the PPP.
Right.
Yeah.
We don't know that
I mean,
in particular.
we can lay them. Nothing to hide. Yeah.
As the newly installed Minister of Finance, what's the need, you'd say, for that thorough audit on the Beaches and Parks Authority that was supposed to be ongoing, given some questions regarding funds?
Which one are you talking about now?
The $141 million that was allegedly spent to upgrade the beaches and parks across the country.
Okay, I'm asking because, and then you said there was a thorough audit that was,
Yes, Barnaby would have mentioned that an audit was supposed to be ongoing, and
yeah, we have completed, or they were completed just some weeks ago. I'm not sure if they have been laid as yet. Audited financial statements, I think going back up to 2024. All right, they had, I think there was maybe about 5 or 6 years, if I recall correctly, that had not been done. And so they were recently completed, and I expect that audited financial statements for 2025 will be done, and the same for 2026. And going forward, we don't have this lag where you have multiple years of outstanding financial statements. So I can say it's you know, we undertook to get those financial statements. They should be laid in the House. Now, I wasn't in the House last time, so I can't say definitively whether they were laid before it was dissolved last time, but I know several years were completed, and the undertaking is to continue on that process. I spoke yesterday about the fact that we are requiring much more stringent reporting from government departments and agencies, including annual reports, financial plans, etc., because that is part of our effort to, you know, improve and increase transparency. And so our view is that statutory bodies that are required to have financial statements, that they're done within the required time, and we do away with this issue where we have statutory bodies with multiple years of you know, outstanding financial statements. So the short answer is several years were done, and I expect work to be, you know, ongoing on 2025 and going forward.
How does the creation of new ministries and the separation of some ministries affect the government's budget allocations?
Well, what happens is it affects it in that we make the budget department has to work very late and over the last couple of weeks. But what happens is, in effect, if you look at the budget book, it's structured in heads, and, you know, money is allocated for different purposes under those headings. When a new ministry is created, for example, I'll use the example of the Ministry of Innovation and National Development. You have for example, the Department of Information Technology and the Digital Transformation Unit come out of the Ministry of Economic Affairs. You have the National Development Plan Secretariat come out of the Office of the Prime Minister and go under this new ministry. And so you're taking allocations that were already set but resident in a different ministry and putting it under the new ministry. So then there's their allocation. So it's a lot of reallocation. So for example, another example would be when it comes to the Ministry of Transport, you know, last time they had utilities, or they had energy and transport. Now it's transport. And so, but the Ministry of Energy and I think it's Development and Aviation, you see things like Water and Sewage Corporation move to the transport. On the utilities, sorry. All right, so it's just, you have utilities and energy and aviation, sorry. So wherever those were before, so for example, aviation was under tourism. Now aviation moves to energy, utilities and aviation. And so it's just a matter of moving things that were already in the budget under the new head. And in some cases, you know, maybe adding some additional funds to help them.
So you see some ministries have their budget, like a portion of their budget split.
Exactly.
For instance, like youth, sports, and culture.
Exactly.
What would have allocated for culture, you take that out of Boleg's budget, now it goes to Bryce's budget.
Excellent example, yes.
Okay.
So culture goes there, and I think national events, I think it's also in culture. And so some of that allocation would have been like under Cabinet Office, and now would go under the Ministry of Culture.
Minister, I understand, the explanation and the time that you gave pertaining to top-notch builders. Are you concerned, though, about public perception created, now
No,
that the
I'm only
documents-
concerned about public perception based on inaccurate, false information. Right? I gave you the situation as it is, and that's how it is. Now, I invite you to inform yourself about the total picture. All right? So perception will be what it is. I gave you the facts, and you can check the facts, but I gave you the facts as they are. Okay?
The budget overruns with parks and beaches. How does the government determine if you actually got value for money after all of the money has been spent?
Mm-hmm.
Especially in something like parks and beaches, where obviously the Guardian has done all these reports on what parks and beaches look like. At the end of the day, how do you kind of justify those things from the government side?
Well, I'll say it like this. I'm not gonna make a comment on the state, right? But I know that the in that particular case and in all cases, and when it comes to works, and when physical works, the program should be someone is engaged to do the work. Before they're paid, there should be an inspection of that particular piece of work and a sign off, and then the payment is made. All right? And so going forward, and we spoke to it extensively, we have to just make sure we redouble our efforts because public is concerned about their expenditure. They're concerned about value for money. I spoke extensively about that, and it's important for us too because we need the public to have trust in what we're doing.
With the business plans that each state-owned enterprise has to come up with, I think you said they're close to finishing them or they have finished them?
We expect, I don't know, we sent out the notices, we got some replies. I can't say how far they are. We expect that those that are finished will be presented. And, but it's going to be an ongoing thing because, again, and they're tabled in the House. It gives an indication of the plans of the ministry and then so they can be compared. When you get to the end of the year, you can compare the performance against what was put forward. Mm-hmm.
The KPIs.
KPIs and
expectations on ROI.
yeah, when it comes to ROI now, remember now we don't operate strictly on a business footing, but it would be KPIs, particularly as it relates to customer service, service delivery, etc. But it's an attempt to, we have, we know we need to improve in terms of service delivery, speed of service, quality of service, and this is an attempt to do so.
To members of the public that are concerned that large amounts of the government's funding is being spent on contracts like the non-bid contract over on Long Island. The minister for Long Island, Rollins, actually just had a run-in with the company that allegedly took on that non-bid contract. Long Islanders were even saying that they've not been seeing development for months, almost a year now. That contract has been in effect. What do you have to say to members of the public who are concerned that the money that they work really hard for is being spent on persons that don't take these contracts seriously?
All right, now there's two questions in there. There's the one about people not taking it seriously. I'll deal with that a second, but because a contract is no bid does not mean the person doesn't take it seriously. So I don't want to answer those two. And I want to say this. The Public Procurement Act was passed in, I think it was March 2021, and it was set to come into effect September 2021. And it revamped all of the public procurement processes, et cetera. It didn't come into effect until September. As you know, we had the election in September. The government changed in September 2021. I think this background is important. And so we had to go in, there had to be training. There was a whole revolution of the public procurement process. All the government agencies and ministries had to be trained in procurement. We had to get the e-procurement system up. We had to hire personnel, et cetera. So it's an undertaking that took, well over a year. You would have you would recall, calls from the opposition talking about why haven't you done the Procurement Act? Why haven't you done the Procurement Act? Because we were setting the foundation. We brought it into place and then it requires, amongst other things, that all government opportunities be put up on the bonfire system, the e-procurement system. It also requires that after contracts have been awarded, there are monthly, quarterly, and annual reports that go up on the system. So a tremendous advance in transparency and openness and visibility of government opportunities. I mean, you register on the portal, you can go and see what opportunities are available for you to bid on. The other thing I want to say is, and so a lot of the commentary comes out of the fact that there is so much more information and so much transparency. As to the issue of the no-bid contract, if you look at Section 31 of the Public Procurement Act, it's about 4 pages long, that section. Section 31 deals with direct award contracts. And so the first thing I want to say is no-bid contracts are allowable under the legislation. And in fact, there's so many instances where no-bid contracts are allowed that it takes up 4 pages of the Act. And it can deal with emergency, it can deal with circumstances on the island, it can deal with how fast you need something done, it can deal with giving opportunities to smaller contractors, etc. And so I think the complaint was that 25% of government contracts were no bid. Well, if 25% were no bid, that means 75% were bid. So I now come to the question, as long back to value for money, there are procedures in place to ensure that when someone, for example, is contracted to paint this room, the Ministry of Works knows what it costs to paint this room. They know how many gallons of paint it takes to paint this room. And so when someone is awarded, for example, a contract like that, there are certain guidelines and stipulations, okay, a certain price range. Now, when it comes to value for money, then it's up to the ministries to ensure that adequate inspections are done and we get quality work for the money paid. So I wanted to go to that long explanation to explain that sometimes the impression might be given that there's something wrong with the no-bid contract. Only something becomes wrong when the government doesn't get value for money, and it's up to us to ensure that the work is being done.
Just going back to this top-notch builders thing, but how is a company like that may be connected to somebody who's...
You're saying maybe and you're speculating, and I said what I had to say on that, please. I think I said what I needed to say. I don't want to get into any speculation and what people say and what is on social media and this and that, because I laid out the facts as they're true to me, and I'm going to leave it like that.
The pension reform?
We laid a white paper on
yesterday. This is the result of a lot of consultation back and forth. We started this back in our term in 2012, because back then I think the outstanding obligation might have been just over $1 billion. Now it's north of $3 billion. All right. So it's I say that to say it's been a long consultation process. Consulted with the unions several times, business people, etc. And so we got to this point where, again, more consultations during our last term, because one of the main things that guided us was that, right now public servants do not contribute to their pensions. And so you don't want to start something where you have people who have already vested and now you're asking them to make a payment. And so we had a lot of back and forth. So we're at the point now where we're going out to a public consultation where we're sending out the white paper to the general public to get their views. We expect that when we come back from the summer recess in the fall, we'll be able to take it up and debate it and hopefully pass it and bring it into effect. So we'll have the summer period for additional public viewing, and take it to the Parliament on September, October, whenever we come back, or whenever the break is and we come back.
Is that when the consultation on the white paper will end?
It'll probably end before that. Normally, we do like a 30-day or 45-day consultation, and then we'll take in all of the comments, or 60-day. Then we take in the comments, see if, what we want to adopt, incorporate it into the legislation, and then take it to Parliament.
So why was it important to include the rate reduction on weave and like human hair?
No, actually, it's funny because in doing the communication, I said to the team that, Bahamians have a tradition of having a nice little joke of something that that's in the budget, particularly when it comes to tariff reduction or duty reduction. But in reality, what the Customs Department told us was that, there are individuals who, because of cancer and things like alopecia, and other health conditions, they undergo hair loss. And so this will mainly aimed at them, but if some other people are able to take advantage, that's fine. But it was mainly, the consideration was for people who suffer from cancer and other health conditions and undergo hair loss, and so it was an attempt to ease the burden on them.
There's always this idea that public service is too big. You're introducing the pension reform, and it's going to cost the government a little bit more money. But then you think about innovation in terms of technology, you bring that in, you got the business plans that are coming that might look at an entire SOE and think, well, maybe we have too much people. Can you talk, and obviously the international bodies are always saying maybe the government needs to slice the public service a little bit.
See, if you go to the Minister of Education now, he'll tell you he's short about 150 teachers. Go to the Minister of Health, he says he's short 400 nurses and 100, 200 doctors. That's why we got to bring, sorry, my grammar. That's why we are, not importing, but bringing in people from Cuba and Ghana and Philippines, right? You go to the pharmacies, it's the PHA pharmacy, it's the same thing. Social department will tell you we need more social workers. Ministry of Works will say we need more inspectors. Now, maybe there's a way to use technology for better service delivery, and we're looking into that. But the idea of size of the public service, and again, we have to take into account the nature of our country, where, and we have the legitimate expectation that if I'm on a family island, I should get the same quality of service, teaching, healthcare, et cetera, that I get in New Providence. The idea of right now, the government, there's no contributory pension fund except for politicians, MPs and senators, they contribute to their pension. Otherwise, there's not. And so what happens is, as people live longer, they retire, and they're living longer, the government is obligated to pay them a pension. And so part of what we're proposing is, particularly for new entrants, you start to make a contribution. Over the years, over the long term, we'll see the benefit. We're talking 10, 20, 30 years, and you'll see a fund build up that can begin to pay these benefits instead of them coming strictly out of the public treasury. And so that's the idea. And so you can look and see, like, okay, we were doing this. We had done it back in 2015. We would have been 10 years in. And so that's why it becomes so urgent. You'll see the benefit over the long term, and it gives you an opportunity to better plan. But that's an issue, but it's a very sticky issue in terms of head count. But I acknowledge your point that there's ways to use technology to improve service delivery, and we spoke again at length about that with the Ministry of Innovation, particularly when talking about things like business license, learning, that sort of thing.
Can you respond to private sector concerns that the guidance notes and collection mechanism for the corporate income tax isn't ready yet?
I don't know who said that. I think my advice is they're ready and people are ready to file.
Okay. And how confident are you that I think it's $130 million will be collected by June?
We're pretty confident, As I said in the communication, we had estimated that we would have about 5 or fewer taxpayers. Information that has come to us during the course of the year indicates that there will be more. The filing period has begun, so as the weeks, they will pay in June. And so as over the next few weeks, we'll get a better picture of the actual amount as they file and the dollar amount as they pay. Now, again, I like to say that, we tend to be very cautious and very, conservative when we put these things in the budget, because you don't want to put a number and you're expecting a certain amount of money and you don't get it.
So is that the finding of additional companies, why, I think this projection is 350 million?
That's for next year, yes,
Yeah,
for
next
next
year.
year, yeah, because, well, what happened is, this year, this was the first year, and there was, like I said, fewer than 5 companies who indicated at the beginning that they would pay. We gotten information during the course of this year that there will be additional this year and additional next year, so that's why it was raised to that amount for next year, because we expect many, many more payers.
You can confirm that the guidance notes and the regulations, everything has been given to these companies already?
I don't know if they've been given to them or if they're available, but my information is that the system is ready for people to begin to file their returns, and they can begin starting the process of paying.
So the payment mechanism is ready, but have they received guidance notes or anything?
I don't know them receiving, all right? Receiving, I understand that they have, all right? I spoke with the Inland Revenue yesterday, and their advice to me is everything is ready.
All right, and I guess.
Final question, please. Final question.
Yeah, okay. Why is the government so confident that it will collect this 99 million from the Grand Bahama Port Authority, and will the failure to collect that revenue throw the budget projections off course?
You're talking about next year?
Yeah.
I think, as I said in the communication, the rights of the government have been affirmed by the arbitration, and so now it's a matter of verifying what we believe is outstanding and going to collect it. All right. Anything else? Thank you. Thank you very much, all.
Thank you very much, Minister, who's always willing to come in and clarify things for us. Thanks again. Now, before I open the floor for questions, I just want to address the big one that everyone has continued to make queries on. Let me just say briefly that while the government understands and respects the public's demand for information concerning this matter in question, it's also important to note that maintaining due legal process is just as important. The government continues to monitor developments, continues to stay engaged with authorities in the U.S., requesting information and liaising on the information that is available. We are committed to transparency and will provide formal updates on verified information. It's not fair for us to respond to conjecture or social media posts or anything of that nature. Again, when verified information is available, it will be provided to members of the public. Are there further questions?
We've been waiting to hear from the gaming board as it relates to the legality of the cabinet appointments of Mr. Bastian and Mrs. Bryce. And the last time the Nassau Guardian asked, we were told basically that we don't know when a statement is coming. Does OPM plan to address this at all, considering it is a public concern and perception is reality, even if it was done the legal way, questions persist? So will anyone be addressing this publicly at any point?
Well, respectfully, I defer that to the gaming board, which obviously has oversight for that and will be able to fully explain how that came to be.
Any update on the Ebola situation? Any update on the Ebola situation, the monitoring the Ministry of Health has been doing?
Well, the 2 patients up to this morning remain in quarantine at the Princess Margaret Hospital. Their samples have been taken. They've been sent on to the Pan American Health Organization to be sent on to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control for diagnostic testing. In the meantime, they will remain in the care of a specialized team at the Princess Margaret Hospital. As soon as we know the results from those samples, they'll be passed on to the public. In the meantime, the safety protocols remain in place at health facilities at the ports of entry to ensure that members of the public are safeguarded. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much.